So a brief summary on what happened to the makeup artist that got kicked out of a wedding. It's basically an age-old story of lack of self-awareness and delusion, a bit of delusion, and a bit of self-aggrandization as well. So this lady went for makeup. She went with a team of 3 people to a wedding. She asked the bride before the wedding if she'd allow her to create content. The bride was like, yeah, fine, no problem. She went there. The bride's a bit timid, not really timid, but she's a quieter, more reserved. The bride and her bridesmaids, very reserved, but they were lovely. The makeup artist, on the other hand, she was pretty, a bit obnoxious, loud, friendly, bubbly, which was fine with the bride and the bridesmaids. Everyone was having a good time, but she was a bit over the top, you know the type. So she was creating a video, you know that My Fiancé video. She wanted to create a content. She did the TikToks, she did her makeup, her team did the hair of the bridesmaids. Everyone looked lovely actually. So when it was time for her to leave, she decided, she wanted to stay a bit longer. She wanted to stay longer. She wanted to stay for the wedding. So she stayed. As if that's not bad enough, she went to the event space with the bride, in the bride's car. She went to the event space with the bride. She found the groom, started filming TikToks of the groom. You know, the whole my fiancé thing. She was using that. And initially, when she came for the wedding, the bride told her that the groom's not really a social media person, but she'll make him do just that little TikTok. So she already had information that the groom isn't really a social media person and he's not a TikTok person. But she did like 10 takes. He'll do it and she'll tell him to do it again. She was taking multiple takes of the TikTok. So that was annoying the groom, but he played along with her. She was all over. She went inside. She was like, oh, the event space is not ready yet. She came outside. Before the bride walked down the aisle, this lady was on the aisle. She was standing. Everyone was sitting for the bride's entrance. This lady was sitting, filming content. My thing is, what business do you have with the groom? She was filming the groomsmen as well. She was filming flower decorations. She was filming everything that had nothing to do with makeup. At that point, everyone was just so tired of her. But they didn't want to be rude, clearly. They were giving her so many social cues. Like the groomsmen were like, oh, you look so tired. You look so tired. The bridesmaids, some of them are like, oh, you look so tired. Even the groom was giving her a bit of a cold shoulder. But she was like, oh, she's letting it roll off her back. And I'm like, it's his wedding. If he's giving you the cold shoulder, that means you should leave, lady. The lady didn't leave. She stayed there, filmed the whole thing. And mind you, this was an unplugged wedding. Basically, an unplugged wedding is a wedding where you're not allowed to film anything. It was very intimate. This makeup artist was filming the whole thing. The bride had a photographer, she had a videographer, but she was all up in their way. She even had the temerity to tell the photographer at one point to move out the way because she was filming something. The photographer the bride hired to film her wedding, the makeup artist was telling him to move out of the way. So after that, she was just all over the place, busybodying about. So guys, to cut the long story short, this lady, after annoying literally everyone at the wedding.
Hey, Mommy.
Hey, darling, how are you?
Fine.
After annoying everyone at the wedding, the groom finally had enough of her and he told her that she was getting on his nerves and he basically told her to leave. She left. She had food and then she left. Before she left, she saw the bride and she was crying to the bride that the groom, she did nothing to nobody. She was playing the victim to the bride. I mean, who cries to a bride at her wedding? Even if something went wrong, I think it's not really good manners to cry to the bride for it. She cried and the bride was like, oh, I'm sorry. I told you earlier that the bride's a bit on the quiet side. The bride was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I wanted you here, blah, 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 just to, make her feel better. This lady left and in her car, she convinced herself to go back to the wedding. After leaving, after the groom telling her that he didn't want her at the wedding, that she's getting on his nerves, basically leave. She convinced herself, saying to herself that nobody's going to bring her down, nobody can dim her shine, that victim mentality crap. She went back to the wedding. She She went back and she went in, and even after going back, I mean, instead of going to sit maybe at the back, if you insist, maybe she's lonely at home, who knows? Instead of sitting at the back or a demure place, she went to sit with the groomsmen. She sat there and everyone's like, okay, this is a bit awkward. She literally just left. The wedding coordinator finally went to her and was like, okay, can I pull you aside? I need to speak to you. She was like, no, anything you want to say to me, you can say to me right here with the groomsmen. She was like, okay, basically the bride and groom want you to leave. She started crying again that she didn't do anything to anybody. She's been here for 12 hours. And I'm like, lady, who asked you to stay for 12 hours? You are literally contracted to do makeup, maximum maybe 5 hours. She stayed for. So before leaving, she found the bride, was crying to the bride again. Like, it was so unhinged. And what made it even more unhinged for me was the fact that she posted a 3-part, you know, you feel like I'm being very long-winded, but she posted a 3-part video about it and explaining to people, crying to people. That was what made it worse for me, because like after going home, at least you should have some introspection about you. Think about what you did, how maybe you went wrong. No, this lady still thinks she's a victim. She posted the video so that people will drag the bride and groom, and everyone ended up dragging her because, like, what? I think the lesson we can all learn from this, especially as vendors, is that yes, sometimes we feel very close to clients and they become like friends, but clients are just that. They're just your clients. Of course, you want to make your clients comfortable, you know, you have a nice chat, but unless the client makes it clear that they would like to have a closer relationship with you, just leave it at that. Like, your client is literally just that, your client. Have a good time, but leave everything there. Don't overstep your boundaries. Because for me, when I have brides, I chit chat with them, try to ease their nerves and everything. But if they're with their friends and they're chatting with their friends, I try not to interfere. You know, I have this thing I live by, especially if I go for home services. You should be seen and not heard. Try as much as possible to almost be invisible, because people like feeling comfortable when they're getting glammed up. And if you're always interjecting in their conversations, it's actually pretty rude and it's pretty mannerless, unless you are invited into the conversation. Like, you have some clients that are like, oh yeah, what do you think about this? Even if they're chatting with their family or friends, they ask you, what do you think about this? Oh, then you can. But some people tend to really just overdo it, and they think, you know, they're so bubbly, you know, I'm the life of the party, but it's not your party. I think finally, another thing, and I think I've mentioned it before, is that there's a saying in Hausa, idan za ka gina rami mugunta, ka gina shi karami, or something like that. This makeup artist wanted people to drag the bride, and that's so unfair, because imagine she posted the video 3 days after the bride's wedding. Imagine all the bliss of your wedding being tainted by something like this. Imagine she'd actually been dragged. That's so unfair. And unless somebody does something to you that's really, really horrendous, you can share without mentioning names, but she literally put out videos of everyone at the wedding, which is actually really unprofessional and highly unethical to me. So anyways, don't blur boundaries is the lesson. How many